Hello, everyone, and welcome to our premiere Facebook Live event. I'm Rei Hotoda, the music director of the Fresno Philharmonic, and I want to welcome our special guests, Dr. Kenneth Froelich from the Fresno State University and our violist from the Fresno Philharmonic, Heather. Welcome, both of you.
Hello.
I want to ask all of you to join us with questions or comments as we have this conversation, so please feel free to post them up and we'll try to answer them. So I just wanted to quickly talk about our world premiere we just had last Wednesday, June 3rd, of Robert Morris's Landscape Greeting. And I wanted to get your take on it because these are my co-curators of Proxima, the music for the next century. We have been working on this program for several years now, and this is our second season. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes, Walter Saul says hello. He says, "Way to go, Ken." Okay, so
thank you, Walter.
Can you share your thoughts about our world premiere we just had?
Yeah, well, really enjoyed listening to the piece. I thought it was a really evocative and lovely work. And, I thought one of the first thoughts I had as I was watching the video was how well that work translated to kind of the asynchronous performance that we had to put together, that all the players worked on and pieced it together, because with it being as ambient and flexible, I think, as it was, I think it made it lend well to the medium. So I thought it was a really lovely way to do the premiere. And while I don't think it necessarily replaces a live premiere, it was really great to be able to hear that and see that performance. And again, just a beautiful, beautiful work.
Yes, and thank you, Heather, for participating in it. So you were one of the violists in the Proxima premiere. What were your thoughts about that?
Well, the process of recording and performing the piece was so different from listening to it. And when I got the chance to sit down, and my family, we've been in quarantine for a few months now. Haven't had a lot of contact with other people. And just getting to sit down together and experience a piece of music, which is something we hadn't done, it actually provided a kind of like space, time, just moment to think and experience sound without having to feel like we have to do anything. Or it was just a really incredible moment of. It's something that I had been missing for a couple of months. And so it was such a different experience from having recorded it, because recording it was in my living room and my neighbors were having a barbecue and we were trying, all this stuff was happening. Yeah. And so that was sort of chaotic, and then getting to experience what happened when we put it all together. And of course, the great work that you did, Rei, with Brian, was on the video, and seeing the artwork put in with the piece was also really lovely.
Yes, I thought it came together pretty well, considering that everyone was sending in their files remotely. And, with the Fresno Art Museum sending their files of the images that were, on exhibition during the time that we were supposed to do this concert. I thought, it was actually, for me, it was really creative to put it all together, having had conducted the work now, at least 2 times in our rehearsal and our dress rehearsal. So for all of you out there, we were supposed to do the concert on March 12th. And the governor issued an ordinance for, sequestering and stay at home. And so we had to cancel that concert on Thursday evening. And you and I, Heather, were trying to scramble to get a flight out of Fresno to get home to our loved ones, in time. And that was such an incredible time. Just so frightening, didn't you think?
Yeah. It was, all I could think about was getting home.
Yeah, I know.
I was thinking about the two of you.
Yes, yeah. And now that we've been home for over 3 months, it's like I'm dying to get out.
Yes, but what was really nice about putting together this work was getting to do something with other people. Yeah. And even though I've been doing some teaching, we've all been doing some of these things online. It's not quite the same thing as I don't know how a lot of people, I don't know, watching, or I know Rei, who can do you, we've become homeschool parents.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've spent most of my day thinking about my son's education, you know, and what, you know, like learning all about all of that, which is a whole new.
Right. Thank you to all the teachers out there who do this.
Yes. Thank you.
On a daily basis, year after year, with so much love and heart in their, you know, in their teaching. But so Ken, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts about, you know, maybe composing during this time. I mean, you know, it's really strange, and oh my gosh, so many things going on right now with the civil unrest even, and just, you know, so many things. What are your thoughts about, you know, what to write about these days, you know?
It's really kind of strange because there's so many things you can write about right now, just because we are living in such challenging times. I mean, whether we're talking about the protests that were going on right now, whether we're talking about the COVID virus itself, or really many of the other issues that have been persisting through this entire time, there's a lot of stuff. But, you know, I think in the end, it still comes back to what's personal, because I think, you know, a composer has to say what is in their own heart. And, you know, I think when all this happened, when we you know, started to, you know, go into our social distancing and staying at home, you know, there was a little joke meme that would go around where you would see the image of a composer at during normal times, and they're sitting at their desk composing, and it says composer during quarantine, and they're sitting at their desk composing. And so, you know, it's kind of like, you know, for what we do practically, it's not that different, but emotionally it's just enormous. And I did find that for the first several weeks of this, I found it very difficult to write, just because, you know, whether it was learning to take my classes from Fresno State and putting them online and figuring out how that works, to just the emotional burden of, you know, everything that had changed. And I'm a natural introvert. Someone tells me, hey, we're going to stay home for the next several weeks, I usually go, sounds good to me. But I mean, even still over time, I found myself really missing so much of what we can find out there. And, you know, the one thought I hadn't shared about the Robert Moore, the piece that we listened to, was how much I missed listening to live music, you know, and hearing that work. And so, you know, that's a large part of what also motivates me as a composer, is getting to hear new pieces, getting to hear music as it comes in, and say, you know, that inspires me. And so that's been something missing as well. But, you know, we continue to write, you know, we continue to look at what's going on around the world, and find influences. And I think, you know, there have been many different kind of ideas proposed as to ways to take advantage of the new world, if you will, about anywhere from writing pieces for Zoom, which, you know, I've seen in various different, you know, modes and different, you know, successes, to, you know, putting these pieces together, you know, just for solos, to working more electronically, you know, that I've seen a lot of different approaches. So it's definitely a unique time, though.
It is. And by the way, Stephanie Trujillo says she went to our Rachmaninoff February concert and really enjoyed that show. So thank you, Stephanie, for tuning in. I want to talk about Proxima because the three of us started this about 3 years ago. And Proxima is a new music chamber series that we started as an offshoot from the Fresno Philharmonic, using members of the Fresno Philharmonic players. And I really enjoyed our concerts. And I know we did, the last one was at Fresno State at the library. And of course, this past one that was canceled in March. But what are your thoughts about this new music series? You know, Ken, I remember sitting at Mad Duck my first season and saying, okay, let's start this, let's do this. And you were so supportive. And so I'm so glad that you're on board as our co-curator. But both of you, any thoughts about, you know, Proxima at this moment?
Well, I was thinking about, you know, preparing for this discussion and thinking about when we were coming up with the name Proxima and Next, and how kind of appropriate it is we're having this discussion today when all of this all these unbelievable events are taking place around us. And it means next, so it's really about looking forward. And so often classical music, we end up recreating and living in the past, which is not a bad thing. There's so much to learn from it, and so much beauty. But a lot of those voices end up being, the very privileged people who are allowed to study classical music and become musicians. And that didn't include everyone. It didn't always include women. It didn't always include, especially not people of color. And that the Proxima project has allowed us to expand the number of voices and the space for people whose voices weren't always represented in classical music. One of the composers, Anthony Green, who's going to be on our last concert. We actually had a pretty diverse group of people. So I think one of our goals with this was to try to bring out those different voices. And we're sort of seeing right now in our society what happens when we don't listen to those voices, the manifestation of that in many ways. And so I hope that going forward, we'll be able to continue to bring all those voices and give them space and time to be heard.
Yes, and I think it's a great opportunity to hear living composers. And one of our goals is to present music from the last, what did we decide, 30 years? The last 25 years? Yeah, and voices of our time, and I think it's a wonderful platform that we have with the Fresno Philharmonic to do that. And we've had intimate concerts, right? I mean, they've been in small spaces. So the other thing I wanted to promote is on Monday, we're going to talk to Robert Morris, the composer of Landscape Greeting that we just premiered his piece last week. So Heather and Ken, any thoughts about Robert Morris and who he is? I know you know him really well, Heather, and thank you for asking him to write the piece for us.
Yeah, well, Bob was a professor of mine at Eastman a while ago, but he's still there, and he composes music primarily using a serial 12-tone. Well, he'll talk more about his music, but he's performed a lot of he's written a lot of pieces that are spatially oriented and especially take place outside in nature, which has made me think a lot about as we go into what does music look like in the future. Maybe some of Bob's music will be very relevant. And so I thought when we needed a piece for the group that he would be the perfect composer and might have something. And he wanted to write something for us.
That's amazing.
And so that was fantastic. And he did it in a few weeks. And I think he always has ideas going. So he was picked up on one of his ideas for that. Well, you'll all meet Bob on Monday, and he's great. I think he knows, he's endlessly knowledgeable.
Yes, and it will be a stay tuned, because usually we have a concert and then we have a stay tuned afterwards, talking with the guest artist or a member of the orchestra or the composer. And this time, since we did the premiere, we wanted to do a stay tuned. It will take place on Monday, 12 noon Pacific Standard Time here on Facebook Live. So thank you, Ken. Thank you, Heather, for joining us. And thank you all out there for joining us. So what are your plans this weekend?
So funny you asked that, because I feel like, it's like the same thing every day, right? But no, a little bit. No, got a few plans going, go for a run.
Yeah.
Compose, things like that.
Heather, any this weekend?
I'm going to enjoy being home because I don't have to work really hard. And if I go for a run, I suppose it'll be on my treadmill in my living room. I'm going to stay abreast of the current events, watch the protests, and I'm going to, see what happens. My neighborhood has been very deeply affected by it all. And, and so I'm really optimistic, and I'd like to see, what comes of it all.
Yes. Well, everyone,
but I would like to,
yeah. Well, everyone stay safe. Thank you for tuning in. Come to our Stay Tuned Facebook Live event. And thank you to Ken and Heather. Bye.
Thank you, Rei.
Bye.
Bye-bye.